Hey guys, hope you're having a good evening so far. The Gulf Coast got a little bit of a gift today with Marco coming through, not nearly as strong as some earlier forecasts had called for, and so far just dumping an abundance of rain on the southeast, but now a depression. In fact, during our last live stream, Marco came ashore near the mouth of the Mississippi River there at the toe of the boot of Louisiana, with maximum sustained winds of 40 miles per hour. So just hitting that tropical storm strength threshold, which begins at 39 miles per hour. So that was around 6 p.m. Central Time. So we are just about done with that storm. Still a few impacts we're going to talk about here in a moment. And then we are now prepping for Laura, that is beginning to make its entrance into the Gulf of Mexico here off the island of Cuba. So things that we are going to talk about here going into the app. Just want to give you a quick update of what's come out with the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center, the 11 p.m. advisory. Pretty much saying that Marco will now continue to deteriorate overnight unless we see some convection into the overnight. It's going to remain a depression and eventually an open remnant low going on into the overnight hours into the morning. But Laura is still holding on here. Current stats has maximum sustained winds at 65 miles per hour. So that's stronger tropical storm strength. Remember, Category 1 hurricane strength starts when maximum sustained winds are at 74 miles per hour or greater, and the current distance right now, it's exiting the island of Cuba, so it's about 80 miles northeast of that western tip of the island. But check this out, still 765 miles to the southeast of Lake Charles, Louisiana, and that is where our storm chaser Aaron Jack is making his base camp for this storm. As we head on to the next couple of days, we'll be chatting with him and getting the latest updates on what's happening on the ground throughout this storm heading into the middle and later part of the week. So let's jump right into it. We're going to go to our MyRadar app and show you the Atlantic Basin, or at least a part of it, looking at the Gulf of Mexico and the Northern Caribbean. So here are our, I guess we'll call it storm and a half. So I'll zoom in here on Laura. There's the circulation moving off the coast of Cuba. You can see we've got some stronger thunderstorms here on the southern side. That's the brighter shade of red. And also some more thunderstorms popping up here on the northern end. And if we look at the winds layer part here, those blue streamlines showing you where some stronger winds are here on the northern side of the storm. So pretty healthy circulation at that. We've seen it maintain itself throughout its passing over the greater Antilles here from the past couple of days. And while it did interact with the land masses of Cuba, and there's some mountains on there that we were hoping was going to maybe do some damage to the circulation, for the most part, the center of circulation stayed over water, and so it's maintained and even strengthened just a little bit here on its trek across the northwestern part of the Caribbean. And it's about to make its entrance here into the Gulf of Mexico. But first, let's talk about Marco. So moving a little bit closer to the Gulf Coast, and in fact, along the Gulf Coast here, I'm going to take off these watches and warnings just for a moment to show you some of the rain that has been moving onshore to the Gulf Coast, panhandle of Florida, Alabama, right here, Mobile Bay, and the panhandle of Mississippi, getting a healthy dose of rainfall for folks here. It has been a very rainy, wet evening for just about everybody here in the southeast. This rain goes all the way up to the coastline. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can get your bearings here. There's the peninsula of Florida down in the bottom right of your screen, and these showers following the streamlines, moving right up the southeast into the Carolinas. Some of this actually making it towards the Outer Banks and eventually making its way off the coastline, following some of the steering flow that's been ushering these storms into the Gulf of Mexico. So now I'm going to jump into our graphics here and show you the track of Marco, because we still do have a track on it. It's a tropical depression, a tropical cyclone that we are keeping an eye on here. It doesn't have much life left to it, but the center of circulation, while all those thunderstorms are going off towards the southeast over Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and the like, the center of circulation is going to make a left turn here and start heading west. And we've kind of seen that path happen. It's making, as it's made its landfall here at the toe of the boot, going to continue moving along the Louisiana coastline. Probably not going to have all that much rain with it. Most of the heavy rain should stay off towards the eastern side of it. But the important part here is that the low pressure center is being attracted to more low pressure. That's over Texas, the trough. Keep that in mind, another steering element in the tropics here. So This path is going to take it westward along the Gulf Coast, and eventually this is just opening up into losing its tropical characteristics, opening up into a low, and that'll be all he wrote there for Marco. But that's the latest track on that. We'll talk about Laura here in a moment, but I do want to take you to the radar and show you some of the storms that Marco has been throwing over the southeast, because there is reason for concern with some of these. Thankfully, it hasn't been too crazy of a night for folks here, other than intense rainfall. You'll notice this orange over the Keys is that tropical storm warning associated with Laura, but this red rectangle over the panhandle of Florida into extreme southeastern Alabama and southwestern Georgia is a tornado watch that's been in effect for the past couple of hours for folks here. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit closer to the coastline here, and we'll take you along the coast and bring you in. Not sure if the SPC, the Storm Prediction Center, plans on extending this watch. They've continued to shrink it over the past couple of hours because a lot of the rainfall has kind of dwindled out for the eastern extent of this watch box here. So the actual watches have been mostly towards these more western counties of Florida into extreme southeast Alabama and into Georgia. They've continued to kind of squeeze that box more closed off than what you see here. So this watch does go until midnight Eastern time, 11 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And of course, the division between Central Time and Eastern Time is right about here along the Florida Panhandle, where Georgia and Alabama kind of split there. So if that doesn't complicate things enough. So we see these storms continuing through the evening hours. I want to zoom in a little bit closer and kind of show you this thicker band of showers here. This is where we've seen maybe not the heaviest rainfall amounts. A lot of that was over southern Georgia here tonight, but like I said, a lot of that rainfall has kind of dwindled off. I'm going to take this watch box off here and put our radar into motion so you can see the general direction that these showers have been heading in, more of a northerly flow. Normally when we see these tropical systems move towards the coastline, we do have the concern for tornadoes and water spouts and things like that, because these storms are rotating. They rotate counterclockwise, and as they come onshore and interact with the land, you get some friction. That low-level vorticity comes into play, and you get a few quick spin-ups of tornadoes. So that is where that risk exists. But a lot of this rain, as it's come onshore, hasn't really had the opportunity to follow that counterclockwise circulation in this motion. We saw some of that earlier this afternoon, and even then, there wasn't really much rotation of concern. In fact, I don't think I've seen any tornado warnings issued tonight so far, but it's been mostly the concern of flash flooding with heavy rainfall amounts here. And in fact, so these yellow lines showing you that counterclockwise motion following the circulation, notice the storms aren't really lining up with it. Yeah, they're moving onshore from south to north, but not really following a curved path here. Most of them just headed straight onshore, moving north, little wiggle room in between, but that's about it. So these rainfall amounts have been really the talk of the town here. Let's zoom in on this heavier shower here. I'll show you some of these storm heights. Those have also been limited here, mostly topping out around 30,000 feet. Earlier tonight we saw some storms. This one's about there, maybe 40,000 feet. If we're being ambitious here, maybe 40,000 feet for storm tops. So that basically tells us that these thunderstorms aren't really getting the chance to grow, to be very strong. Like I said, just dumping some very heavy rainfall. Maybe not even much for rumbles of thunder here, because these storms aren't getting very tall. Part of that is because the high pressure that has been steering Laura and Marco into the Gulf of Mexico kind of puts a squash on that, so it doesn't let these grow very tall at that. But these rainfall amounts, I can't say enough about that. That's been impressive. We've seen some of these cells moving onshore. The nice thing is that they're moving quickly, but some of these cells have been dropping rainfall rates of 2.5, 3 inches of rain per hour. So that's a lot, because folks here have been getting rain over the past couple of days. So this is not their favorite forecast here with this storm, because they've just been getting all of the rain from it. But definitely not going to be having any drought problems in the southeast anytime soon. And this is the rainy season anyway, so it's to be expected. But some of these rainfall rates, I'll pull them up here on air and let you know, and I'll point out the storms that I'm talking about. So let's pause this radar and put it in current mode. So you see a lot of the showers here in southern Georgia, a little heavier earlier on tonight, but mostly beginning to dry out a bit, so getting a bit of a break there. As you make your way more westward into the panhandle of Florida and southern Alabama, that's where we see some of those heavier showers over the western portion of the panhandle and the more northern Gulf Coast. So let's click on this cell here. You can't see me clicking, but I promise I am, and I'll let you know which cell I'm pointing out with these heavier rainfall totals. Okay, so that's coming in at about 2.95 inches per hour. So this cell right here dropping almost 3 inches of rain per hour. So even though these things are moving really quickly, maybe 18 miles an hour trucking northward, they're dumping a lot of rain even as they skirt by quickly. So with that, expect flooding to be a concern, localized flooding along the I-10 corridor, maybe Highway 98, seeing some issues here for rainfall as we head on through tonight. And then, as I mentioned before, the Hurricane Center is keeping an eye. If Marco does help produce some more convection or bubble up some more thunderstorms tonight while it's got a couple bands offshore, then we may see some of that rain continue to trek towards the west as the center moves towards the west. Notice not really any rain by the center. This light blue shade you see here is not actually rain. That's ground clutter. That's the radar picking up moisture and little particulates in the atmosphere. But these darker shades of green, yellow, orange, and red, that is rainfall, and the red being the heaviest rainfall. So some of this may continue to spread westward into the overnight hours, but really that's about all we'll see out of Marco. A continuation of the rip current threat, that will continue into tomorrow because of Marco, but also because of Laura. So now I want to take you back to our MyRadar app, and we're going to give you a better look at Laura and what's going on with this system. And I tell you, that's looks like you can't see that. Let's fix that. I'm going to bring up our app. We've got that with our device here in the studio, so bear with me for a moment as I pull it up. Thanks, Matt, for letting me know that I was leading the people on for nothing. I promise not to do that again. Let's zoom in. Loading up here. And this is my favorite part about it. You guys can track along with us. But if you got our winds layer on, look at that. Clear counterclockwise rotation. This is Laura over the western tip of Cuba. So the southern extent still bringing showers into the northwestern Caribbean. We're even bringing some rain to the Yucatan Peninsula there in Mexico. But now that eye, or center of circulation, it's not exactly a closed eye, starting to make its way offshore of Cuba and make its way into the Gulf of Mexico. With it, bringing some showers up the coast. The Keys have been seeing some heavier showers there. Southwest Florida, the peninsula at large has seen some stray showers here and there moving quickly across the peninsula. I would even say racing up the coastline of Southwest Florida. We may see some more of these showers continue to move in through the Everglades, up through Naples, Fort Myers, Sarasota. Not sure if places as far north as Bradenton will really see much rain going on into tonight, but some signs of banding associated with Laura as the system continues to emerge into the Gulf of Mexico. So if you're in the lower Keys tonight, expect to see more rainfall with these little scattered showers moving on through. Marathon has had a steady train of showers moving through. And like I said, the middle and lower Keys, Key West, kind of dodging the showers tonight. We're actually between two bands now, but probably going to get a few more of those before sunrise as we head into the evening hours. Winds whipping, though. This is at 500 millibars, but I can show you the winds at the surface still have been gusting to tropical storm force strength for folks there. So let me adjust. If you were with us yesterday, you heard about my contacts fiasco. So I've got my glasses today. They're just not on my face right now. All right, let's pull up these surface winds. Yeah, so you can see the pinks being the weaker winds. As we get into the purples and blues, those are the stronger winds. So, yeah, we're getting a bit of a gust here in Key West. We're on the verge of those pinks and purples there. So winds probably gusting in the upper 20-mile-an-hour range, maybe some 30-mile-an-hour gusts. Wouldn't be surprised to see them to tropical storm force strength, but I haven't seen any reports of that here in the past couple of hours here tonight. But yeah, this storm is continuing on a northwesterly path, making its way into the Gulf of Mexico. So now if I take you back to our WSI graphics, I can show you the latest track as of 11 p.m. coming out of the National Hurricane Center. Infrared imagery here showing you this thing has been bubbling up all night. The darker shades of gray and red, those are the stronger thunderstorms around the circulation of the storm. And it's probably going to be a lot better looking, a lot more obvious of more telling of a tropical system as we head into the early morning hours and begin to see that close in a bit and wrap around with no land interaction to bother it, not much sheer above it. We do expect it to strengthen to at least a Category 1 hurricane by Tuesday evening. Some of the models, some of the track guidance from the National Hurricane Center that came out in their 11 p.m. discussion has this touting hurricane force by tomorrow earlier on in the day, maybe early afternoon or late morning. So keeping an eye on that. But roughly the track taking it across the Gulf of Mexico, and then we begin to approach the Gulf coastline with a Category 2 hurricane by Wednesday evening. So some things to point out here with the cone. The cone only accounts for the uncertainty in the center of the storm. If you are outside this cone, it doesn't mean you won't see impacts. Want proof of that? Hey, look at Marco. The center is nowhere near where all that rainfall is, sheared way off to the east of it. So the center of the storm is forecasted to make landfall somewhere within this cone. So that is what that uncertainty is marked by. Now, you'll notice Category 2 before it makes landfall. The 11 p.m. advisory, I'll tell you straight, has it at a high-end Category 2 at that point. So this is not set in stone. Once this emerges into the Gulf of Mexico, there isn't much to keep it from strengthening. So we've definitely got to keep an eye on this one, guys, because as we go on through tomorrow, we could see that this forecast would evolve to maybe bring it just over that threshold from Category 2 to Category 3. Again, there isn't a whole lot of difference when you're talking 5 miles an hour, but as of the 11 p.m. advisory, this Category 2 mark you see here off the coast of the Gulf Coast would bring that to 110 mile per hour maximum sustained winds on the current forecast track. So that's something I want you to keep in mind. You definitely need to prepare for the storm if you are along the Gulf Coast from the coastal bend of Texas, way down by Corpus Christi, Brownsville, up around to the Big Bend of Florida. I know that's a large swath, but I made the comparison the past couple of live streams we've done. Say you're swimming in the pool, somebody in the deep end makes a cannonball, belly flop, you're going to notice it. You don't even have to watch them do it. The waves move, and you notice it. So there are some impacts there. With Marco, the impacts around the Gulf Coast have been largely with rip currents and rough seas. We've got some surfline camera we'd like to show you. The footage from the beaches earlier on today. We'll start with Panama City Beach to show you it was a pretty dreary day out there. We had some showers passing through for most of the day, gloomy skies, and some pretty rough surf for folks out there. We're trying to get that camera up there for you now. Bear with us. If you joined us a little earlier this evening, we took you along the Gulf Coast for a little tour of the beaches, mostly in Florida and along Texas. But yeah, now we're going to pull up our Panama City Beach cam. So this was from a few hours ago. I would say maybe 5 or 6 p.m. Central Time. And yeah, you see the seas are not happy there. A bit of a rough beach day, so to speak. And something that's not always obvious, with rip currents, we're concerned with the undertow. So that's not something you can see from the surface of the water, but those rough waves do show you that not exactly the best beach day, flying double red flags up at the beach there. So that will continue into the rest of this week. I expect poor beach conditions and surf conditions through the next several days as Laura emerges into the Gulf of Mexico. We'll take you now up the coast, or I should say west of this area towards Pensacola Beach. This is a video from there around the same time. It's pretty windy. You can see the sea oats blowing in the wind there to show you it was a bit gusty because of the storms moving onshore in association with Marco earlier on, and things looking a little choppy there as well. But I want to take you back to our WSI graphics and show you some of the watches and warnings that are in effect. And actually, we'll finish off this track to show you that once Laura moves inland, it will quickly begin to deteriorate, moving northward and then curving out to the east, doing the opposite of what Marco did, eventually curving off to the east and out to the Atlantic seaboard with the systems that are picking up and steering it that way. Again, we'll go over all that in a moment. Current watches and warnings in effect with Laura. We still have some watches and warnings in effect for the island of Cuba as the storm begins to move away. Like I said, the lower Keys and middle Keys and the dry Tortugas under tropical storm warning as of the 11 p.m. advisory. That's to be expected. It's been the case all day. So moving out now to the Gulf Coast. Folks here got a little bit of a break from the advisories after Marco weakened today. The NHC for some time, didn't have any advisories in effect for the northern Gulf Coast, and that was a very short break from 2 p.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern. Then they began to issue these advisories in advance of Laura's approach because it's set on a time scale. So we're now within that 36-hour or so window until these impacts from Laura become apparent. We'll run some models and show you about when you can expect those impacts to move into this area. But just want to show you those advisories in effect. They're watches right now. The pink is a hurricane watch, and that extends from, as of the 11 p.m. advisory, Port Bolivar, Texas, west to Morgan City, Louisiana. So that's the area you see there in the lighter pink shade. Then on either side of that, we have tropical storm watches. So on the western portion of that, a tropical storm watch is in effect from south of Port Bolivar to San Luis Pass, Texas. And then the tropical storm watch on the other end goes from Morgan City, Louisiana, all the way out to the mouth of the Mississippi River. So that is where we have our concern at this point, where the seas can get a bit turbulent. Something that was surprising to me here is the impact from storm surge, and that always seems to be an impact that is overlooked, I would say, especially along the vulnerable coastline of the northern Gulf, the boot of Louisiana. Those marshlands very vulnerable, and it doesn't take much to have that danger from storm surge. And with these amounts, we're looking at more of a storm surge risk than we did with Marco. Obviously, this looks to be a more intense storm here. So between Vermilion Bay all the way out to High Island, Texas, we could see anywhere from 7 to 11 feet of storm surge. So when I say storm surge, I mean 7 to 11 feet of water above where it normally is, above where the water normally meets land, 7 to 11 feet above that. So that's pretty impressive there for storm surge totals. But that's just for that area between Vermilion Bay, so about Lake Charles area, west back towards Texas, near just east of Galveston Bay abouts. But folks in this light pink area here under storm surge watch, anybody who's in this shaded area could expect to see impacts from storm surge at least between 2 to 3 feet. And of course, as this forecast evolves, it's going to take into account the tide. So as the timing becomes more fine-tuned with Laura's arrival and the position of the forecast track and how it enters into the Gulf Coast, that will then call for the adjustments of how that storm surge forecast plays out. But safe bet to say, if you're within this shaded area along the Gulf Coast, or you're very close to the coastline, water and storm surge coming on in will be a threat that you'll have to take into consideration while you're making your hurricane preparations. Something that you should be doing now: check that kit, review that plan with your family, start thinking about what decisions you're going to make as the storm moves into the Gulf of Mexico, and get prepared, because time is ticking. We're getting into that window here where it won't be long before Laura is knocking on our door here along the Gulf Coast. So something to keep in mind. Be prepared. Start thinking about what actions you might take as this storm gets a little closer to folks here along the Gulf Coast. But hurricane hunters have been very busy here over the past couple of days. I'll show you the latest path that they've been taking into Laura. They've been working hard here. We've had a number of data coming into these models here to help fine-tune the forecast. So these were 2 flights that were going into, let's see, I believe it was a P-3 Orion. We had a NOAA plane and a U.S. Air Force Hurricane Hunters plane. So they've been busy running a bunch of flights in here. That's for the last 2, where we saw some winds recorded of 70 miles per hour, some winds of 60 miles per hour. Pressure, they found samplings in a couple areas around 994, 995 millibars. So we've seen things dropping. At 11 p.m., the official pressure reading was at 996 millibars. So we have seen a little bit of intensification here, signs that Laura is beginning to get itself together here and kind of hone in on a center, despite, once again, the fact that it was interacting with land. Taking you now to infrared imagery. So this is what we saw when we were showing you the path. Infrared imagery kind of tells us, it takes a sample of the temperature of the clouds looking down from space. So it kind of tells us where we have convection, the bubbling up of strong new thunderstorms within the circulation of the storm. And that kind of tells us kind of where we're at. I like to compare it to a boiling pot of water. You have these thunderstorms bubbling up. I would show you the visible imagery if I could, but it's nighttime, so you won't see anything. But we'll go with the infrared for now. We got what looks like some healthy thunderstorms on both the north side and south side of this storm. Excuse me, you can see the darker shades of red showing you some of those colder cloud tops. So as it's trekked across the southern coastline of Cuba, really not slowing it down too much here, folks, and that's going to mean once it breaks into the Gulf of Mexico, where it doesn't have much to interrupt it, it's likely going to take the opportunity to intensify here. Water vapor. This has been my favorite satellite imagery to show tonight, and that's because it looks from the top down, the upper third of the atmosphere. We start looking at those steering elements at 500, 300 millibars. This is also where we look to find the jet stream, so we see somewhat of the mechanics in the atmosphere. I've had some trouble losing my pointer on this graphic, so I am going to be wiser this time as I scoot this over here. Let me get my pointer. This is Laura right here, these brightly shaded colors. This is the moisture coming through and those thunderstorms popping up. This is the rain left from Marco, and might be a little hard to tell, but this is the Gulf coastline of the U.S. here, going from Texas along Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, right there. So the oranges and grays show dry air. These lighter grays, white, and colorful blobs, that's moisture in the atmosphere. So dry air, moist air. But look at how it's flowing. That's what we really gather from these water vapor imageries. You can see the general flow around here. Oh, let's redraw that again. One moment. See this general flow here, trough of low pressure coming up and about out there. So counterclockwise spin here. This is actually low pressure cut off from the jet stream. That's an important clue we're going to talk about here in a moment. Then we generally have, this has been a little bit deformed here over the past couple of hours. I'm going to talk to you about that in a second, why it's happening. But this is high pressure, clockwise spinning. This is the Bermuda High, or the Atlantic Ridge that we like to talk about, that has been steering things along. It's a little deformed on this end. You notice we have something counterclockwise. Kind of looks like its friend over here. This, don't worry about it right now. This is a TUT, T-U-T-T, Tropical Upper Tropospheric Trough. These are signs of low pressure in the upper levels of the atmosphere. They're not really present at the surface. Don't pay too much attention to this. It's just kind of putting some pressure on the high pressure that you see here. There's a lot of pressure in that sentence. So it's just kind of deforming this nice counterclockwise oval shaped kind of conveyor belt that we have here. Point being, this mechanism is helping to steer Laura into the Gulf of Mexico, and it's continuing to build to the west. So notice, this is about the extent of where those storms have been. We had some scattered showers moving up the east coast of Florida earlier, but this is building in, so some drier air in the upper part of the atmosphere kind of suppressing rainfall activity on the eastern coastline, and a lot of that has been kept along the I-75 corridor, western side of the peninsula, and now most of that's really offshore. And in this window between these two conveyor belts is where we see all of the moisture from Marco kind of siphoning out here and off the coast of the U.S. by the Carolinas and the Outer Banks. Now, talking about this trough of low pressure over here, this has been kind of scooping in from the desert southwest. Notice we've got clockwise motion here, so this is high pressure. Just think of this as a bunch of high and low pressures. We're looking at the flow of the atmosphere. So here's this trough coming on through, dipping down through the desert southwest, Texas, parts of Mexico. Here's our low pressure, the cutoff low that kind of saved Texas from getting much impact from Marco and kind of kept things off towards the east. Now the center, the low pressure center of Marco, it's pretty weak, but it's going to be attracted. Low pressure likes low pressure, so that's why it's taking that westward jog over here. It's going to meet up with its friend over in the trough, and that's it for Marco. But as Laura moves in, it's going to kind of come up this alley into the Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to try to join the party with the low pressure over Texas. It's following this ridge first and moving this way, but this guy, he's been cut off for about a week, so his time is coming up here. Not as quickly as we thought, so this could mean good news for folks along the coastal bend and inland on Texas, but this is where we're watching over the next couple of days. What kind of behavior happens with this trough? Because that will help tell how far along northern Texas coastline, Louisiana coastline, Laura makes its entry to the U.S. So these are the mechanisms that we look at as Laura begins to make its approach to the Gulf Coast. We still got a couple days here before that happens, so this is why we say nothing is set in stone, because the atmosphere is always moving. But these are the kinds of clues that the folks over at the National Hurricane Center are taking a look into, among a plethora of other things, when they develop these forecasts and chart these updates with new forecast tracks, cones, and all that stuff. So that's kind of where that thinking comes from. Now, impacts for folks along the Gulf Coast as we head into the next couple of days. I want to show you some of the models that we have. Now, over the weekend, I didn't show a lot of these because they weren't initializing well on Marco. We have that storm out of the way. Laura's coming into the picture, and the model is actually getting in better agreement over this and picking it up pretty well. Like I said, there's not much to work against it when it's in the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Very warm water temperatures here and not a lot of shear in the upper atmosphere. So I'm going to suck up that warm, hot Gulf of Mexico water. Latent heat with the evaporation of that water is going to fuel this. We get the Carnot cycle going. Works just like an air conditioner, just I guess in reverse. And then we get that exhaust into the upper atmosphere. There's not a lot of shear, so we have healthy intake of fuel, the mechanism of using it, and the healthy exhaust of then that energy. So with that, we expect Laura to be a better looking, more organized storm over the Gulf of Mexico. This is one model. This is the RPM, and this is what it looks like as we head on through the rest of this evening. We see a more defined center here coming up on this future radar of sorts. So by tomorrow afternoon, we may have an eye with Laura, maybe, if this model comes to fruition. Start to see some more rainfall along the Gulf Coast from parts of western Florida and along the northern Gulf Coast. Some showers could be coming in tomorrow. Gusty, quick-moving showers with some heavy rainfall at times. And then as we head into the evening hours on Tuesday, making that approach into the Gulf of Mexico here, and we see maybe some more strengthening, some more organization, and maybe a well-defined eye here with Laura in this scenario, and more banding of storms coming on shore for the Gulf of Mexico coastline here for Louisiana, even back to, like I said earlier, kind of affects the entire Gulf Coast, so something to watch out for. We see those showers come on shore for parts of Texas as well. And then this model in particular, kind of following along with the forecast cone the National Hurricane Center put out 11 p.m. So that would take it into the coastline there going into Wednesday. Now, this is the wind radius that the National Hurricane Center forecast at 11 p.m. put out. This is another way to view it here, kind of simulating what that wind field will look like around the storm. Now, this isn't a model. This is what the forecast that came out at 11 p.m. looks like when you translate it to a graphic like this. So that lighter yellow area showing you tropical storm force winds. When we get into the orange, we start getting into strong tropical storm, and then the red is category 1 hurricane force winds. So making its trek across the Gulf of Mexico, we see that red begin to expand some. So at this point, we are dealing with a hurricane, and then as it comes ashore sometime Wednesday night, notice, I'll backtrack this for you a little bit, we begin to see things get gusty and maybe some tropical storm force winds moving onto the coastline of Louisiana as early as Wednesday morning. So that's why you need to get those preparations taken care of and have your plan ready on how you'll respond to this storm going into tomorrow. Tuesday, the last day you really have to freely make those plans without the weather getting in the way too much, other than maybe some passing storms. So Wednesday, you need to be set, you need to be ready, and know what you're going to do. Like I said, the forecast isn't written in stone, but we got a pretty good agreement in some of the telling signs, some of the data that's been coming in the modeling from the National Hurricane Center, really starting to get a lock on the track for this storm. So some better confidence on this storm from what we've had in the past couple of days. And that comes with the gift of time. So once again, putting this into play, we're looking at a potential landfall sometime Wednesday evening. If the storm slows down enough, we could see that go later and later to maybe the wee hours of the early morning on Thursday. And of course, myself, meteorologist Mike Lennon will be in tomorrow, and our chief meteorologist Leslie Hudson will be in tomorrow evening. So we will be guiding you through this storm as we head on through the next couple of days and help explain any of the newer data that comes in with this. So let's talk about what to expect with a hurricane. So with a category 1 hurricane, we expect winds to be within that threshold You'll be between 74 mile per hour maximum sustained winds to as much as 95 mile per hour maximum sustained winds. With that, you'll see some minor damage, maybe some limbs from trees, leaves scattered in the streets. It really depends on your individual community. Power outages likely because with the winds blowing, you get tree limbs knocking that down. That's what you see at Category 1 hurricanes. Could be a little stronger than that for some communities who are more vulnerable, and some other communities that have seen a couple storms coming through, well, those tree limbs are already taken off in other storms, like maybe some severe thunderstorms or something along that kind of deal. Places that we're dealing with, Cristobal, just 2 months ago, Category 1 may not be as severe for you as some other spots along the coastline that haven't seen any activity yet this season. Category 2, that puts your winds, your maximum sustained winds, in the range of 96 miles per hour to up to 110 miles per hour. So, yeah, we're getting up there, folks. And like I said, the 11 p.m. advisory at some point with Laura near the coastline puts those maximum sustained winds on the upper end of that range at 110 miles per hour. So definitely something to be concerned with and factor into your plans as you're deciding how you're going to respond in advance of this storm. So in this case, we likely see extensive damage and power outages last a bit longer, a week or so, with some of these storms, depending on your individual case. So definitely something we need to keep an eye on. Laura now making its entrance into the Gulf of Mexico, and we're watching very closely to see how this storm develops going into the next 12, 24, 36 hours in its approach to the Gulf of Mexico coastline. So that's an update on what's been going on and the latest information from the National Hurricane Center as of the 11 o'clock advisory, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. Central Time. Thanks for joining us and sticking around for these live events tonight. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below. We'll try to be getting some answers for you all going on into the next several hours. We'll be posting updates on the latest information on all of our social media channels that you can follow. You'll see them on your screen below, at the bottom of your screen here in a moment. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, now's a great time, and hit the notification bell so you'll know whenever we're going live with these updates. We're going to be running a couple of these over the next couple of days to keep you on top of everything. And of course, having the MyRadar app, you can track along with us, use the winds layer, or just use the radar to follow along with what's going on. And if you have your location settings on, then you will be notified whenever you have rain or thunderstorms heading your way, and you can stay ahead of the storm. That's our goal here, to keep you ahead of all of these storms. All right, that's going to do it for me tonight, guys. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. Catch the fast forecast coming out, I guess, in the next couple of hours here heading into the morning, and we will see you back here tomorrow.